The tariff domino effect, a question of billions. One trade policy can quietly redirect hundreds of billions in global commerce. Trump-era tariffs set off a global chain reaction, shifting supply chains and forcing tough choices. The Supreme Court's recent decision to block these tariffs has thrown a wrench into this complex machine. Some industries welcomed protection, but others, manufacturers, farmers, consumers, felt the pain. The August 2025 ruling didn't just strike down a policy, it signaled limits on executive power in trade. The ripple effects will be felt for years, as America's role in global trade is redrawn. The steel and aluminum curtain. Understanding the Trump-era tariffs. In 2018, the Trump administration invoked Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, allowing tariffs if imports threatened national security. This led to a 25% tariff on most imported steel and 10% on aluminum, aiming to boost domestic production. The conflict escalated, especially with China, using Section 301 to retaliate against unfair trade practices. Tariffs soon covered hundreds of billions in Chinese goods, from machinery to electronics. The strategy used economic pressure to force change, protect jobs, and reduce the trade deficit. The America First doctrine was now commerce policy. But many economists warned tariffs are a tax on consumers and businesses, and predicted retaliation would hurt U.S. exporters, especially farmers. Allies like Canada and the EU criticized the national security justification as a dangerous precedent. The result: years of legal and political battles. The tariffs were a tool to reshape global supply chains, but their costs and controversies quickly mounted. The stage was set for a major legal showdown. The consequences would reach far beyond trade. The controversy: a nation divided by trade policy. The tariffs split the American economy. Domestic steel and aluminum producers saw a surge in demand and jobs, calling tariffs a lifeline against unfair competition. But businesses relying on global supply chains, auto manufacturers, construction firms, faced soaring costs. Many small businesses couldn't absorb the hit or shift suppliers quickly. For them, tariffs were a self-inflicted wound. American agriculture was hit hardest. China retaliated, targeting U.S. exports like soybeans, devastating farmers and forcing government bailouts. The trade war helped some, but hurt many others. The debate cut across party lines, pitting protectionism against free trade. Was America better off shielding its industries or embracing global integration? This fundamental disagreement pushed the issue to the Supreme Court. The legal battle wasn't just about policy, it was about the Constitution. The court was asked to decide who really controls U.S. trade policy. The answer would reshape the nation's economic future. The stakes couldn't be higher. The nation waited for a verdict. The gavel falls. The Supreme Court steps in. Legal challenges began almost immediately, with importers and foreign governments arguing the president overstepped constitutional authority. The core question: did Congress give away too much power to the executive through laws like Section 232? Early court challenges failed, but a coalition of steel importers persisted. Their case, American Institute for International Steel v. United States, argued Section 232 was so vague it gave the president a blank check. The Supreme Court took up the case in late 2024. By then, the tariffs' real-world effects were clear. The government defended the president's authority. Challengers warned of dangerous overreach. On August 5, 2025, the court ruled 6-3 against the tariffs. The majority found Section 232 lacked a clear standard, making it an unconstitutional handover of legislative power. The court didn't judge the tariffs' wisdom, just the legality of the process. The gavel fell, ending a cornerstone of Trump-era trade policy. The decision sent shockwaves through government and industry. The rules of U.S. trade had changed overnight. The Supreme Court's majority opinion focused on the non-delegation doctrine. Congress can't hand over its core powers without clear guidance. Chief Justice Roberts wrote that Congress must provide an intelligible principle to guide the executive. The phrase national security in the 1962 law was too broad, opening the door to limitless presidential power. Justice Gorsuch warned of unchecked executive power, calling for a return to the original constitutional balance. Dissenters argued the court was overreaching and that Congress has long given presidents broad discretion in foreign affairs. The ruling signals a shift in how the court views the separation of powers. The constitutional debate is just beginning. The economic data since 2018 tells a complex story. Steel imports dropped by 25% after tariffs, but domestic prices rose, hurting manufacturers. The trade war with China caused U.S. imports from China to plummet, while imports from Southeast Asia surged. The trade deficit didn't shrink, it grew to record highs. Retaliatory tariffs devastated U.S. agricultural exports, especially soybeans, which fell by over 75% to China. Some sectors benefited, but many paid a heavy price. The Supreme Court's decision is expected to reverse some trends, but not overnight. Removing tariffs should lower costs for industries like autos and construction. Lifting tariffs on Chinese goods could mean lower consumer prices, but new challenges for domestic producers. The data shows protection helped a few, but hurt many. The next phase will be a gradual, complex adjustment. The economic roadmap is clear. Change is coming, but it won't be easy. The lessons of the past 7 years will shape the future. The numbers don't lie. Trade policy has real, lasting consequences. The world is watching what happens next. The Supreme Court's decision sent shockwaves through U.S. business. Manufacturers and automakers welcomed the ruling, anticipating lower material costs and renewed competitiveness. For some, it's a lifeline, halting plans to move production overseas. But uncertainty remains. The process of unwinding tariffs is complex, with no set timeline. Businesses await guidance on contracts and goods in transit. For domestic steel and aluminum, the ruling is a blow. Industry leaders warn of renewed threats from cheap imports and are lobbying for new protections. The fight to protect these industries isn't over. It's just moved to Congress. Companies that reconfigured supply chains away from China now face tough choices: return to old suppliers or stick with new partners. The reset button has been hit on global supply chain strategies. Every decision now weighs cost against risk, short-term gain against long-term stability. The consequences will shape the U.S. economy for years. The business landscape is in flux. The next moves are critical. The Supreme Court's decision echoed worldwide. Allies like Canada and the EU welcomed it as a return to rules-based trade. China's response was measured, hoping for concrete steps towards stable relations. The potential removal of tariffs could boost Chinese exports, but strategic competition remains. For the WTO, the ruling is significant. Reining in unilateral U.S. actions strengthens multilateralism. Other countries had started citing national security to justify their own protectionism, threatening global trade rules. The decision may slow that trend, but won't instantly repair trust. The world has changed. Supply chains have diversified, and economic nationalism has grown. The pandemic and geopolitical tensions have left lasting scars. Rebuilding trust will take time. The ruling removes a major obstacle, but challenges remain. The path to a stable global trading system is still uncertain. The world is watching America's next move. The Supreme Court's decision marks a turning point for U.S. and global trade. By blocking the tariffs, the court reasserted Congress's role in foreign commerce and ended a 7-year experiment in protectionism. U.S. businesses expect lower costs, while steel and aluminum industries face new uncertainty. Allies see hope for a more predictable, rules-based order. The data shows the tariffs' disruptive effects, altered trade flows, harmed exports, and complex supply chain shifts. Unwinding these policies will be gradual and challenging. The ruling could strengthen institutions like the WTO and force a national debate on trade policy. But the underlying tensions, unfair trade, competition with China, and protectionist pressures remain. The world has changed, and economic nationalism is rising everywhere. The Supreme Court closed one chapter, but the next is unwritten. The debate between protectionism and free trade is far from over. The future of the global economy hangs in the balance.